He thought it was just arthritis, until he couldn't walk without a cane. Dmitri was 66 when it hit him. He woke to a pain so sharp in his big toe that he thought he'd broken it overnight. Red, swollen, throbbing like it had its own heartbeat. He hadn't fallen, he hadn't twisted anything, but by noon he couldn't put on a shoe. By evening he was limping. Just arthritis, the urgent care doctor said, scribbling a prescription. But 2 weeks later it flared again. Then again, this time in his ankle, then his knee. And finally, after a specialist visit and one simple blood test, the real culprit was named. Gout, an ancient word, a painful condition, and one fueled, strangely, by 3 foods he ate almost every day. The lie of healthy enough. Dmitri wasn't careless. He didn't drink heavily. He walked daily. He even had a fruit smoothie every morning, blueberries, banana, a splash of yogurt. But his real meals? That's where the quiet danger lived. He loved red meat, not in excess, just a few sausages here, a steak on weekends, anchovies in his Caesar salad, liver pâté at his brother-in-law's house. Rich food, they'd joke. He also drank orange juice, just a glass. For vitamin C, he thought, and he liked his beer, especially with dinner. None of this screamed unhealthy, but together it was a perfect storm. Gout doesn't begin with pain. It begins in the blood. Gout is not just about old joints or bad genes. It's about uric acid. When the body breaks down purines, compounds found in certain foods, uric acid forms. Normally, the kidneys filter it out, but as we age, this process slows, and when there's too much uric acid in the blood, it crystallizes, not just anywhere. In the joints, sharp needle-like crystals, often in the big toe, ankle, knee, or fingers. The pain? It's not from movement, it's from microscopic shards grinding into tissue every time you do move. And here's the kicker. It builds silently. You don't feel it until it's already too much. So, what were the 3 foods? Here's what we found in Dmitri's case, and in hundreds of others like his. Organ meats and processed red meats, liver, kidneys, sausages, bacon, packed with purines, not poison on their own, but eat them regularly after 60, and your body may no longer keep up with the uric acid load. Beer and sugary drinks, like orange juice. Beer isn't just alcohol. It contains guanosine, a purine derivative. Add in fructose, found in juices and sodas, and you've got a double hit. Fructose increases uric acid faster than most realize. Certain seafoods, anchovies, sardines, mussels, scallops. Delicious, but dense in purines. When combined with even moderate alcohol, they create the perfect gout cocktail. What made this dangerous? Dmitri thought he was eating well. He wasn't binging. He wasn't living recklessly. He was simply aging, and still eating like he was 40. The wake-up call. It wasn't until Dmitri had to cancel a fishing trip, his first with his grandson, that he broke down. I couldn't even climb the dock stairs, he said, voice trembling. That's when we sat down, reviewed his diet, looked at his labs, and began the quiet work of reversing the buildup. Not just with medication, but with awareness, and something even rarer, humility. In order to feel alive again. Where we go next, Dmitri's story is only the beginning. In the next chapter, we meet Yelena, 71, whose gout presented not in her toe, but in her fingers. She was misdiagnosed with arthritis, took painkillers for 2 years, all while unknowingly sipping the very drink that was fueling her inflammation. What was it? You might be sipping it too. Would you like to hear her story? She thought it was arthritis. But the swelling kept coming back. Yelena was 71 and graceful, a retired violin teacher. Her fingers had once danced with precision. Now they ached, bulged, stiffened with a slow, relentless cruelty. She wore rings on a chain around her neck, no longer able to slip them over swollen knuckles. Her doctor called it arthritis. She accepted the label. Ibuprofen, a few stretches, warm compresses, but nothing truly helped. Until one winter morning, after pouring herself a tall glass of health, the pain surged again, fast and bright, in the base of her thumb. And that's when something clicked. The drink that felt healthy, but was quietly fueling her pain. She'd been drinking it for years. Every morning, every afternoon too. Pomegranate juice, rich in antioxidants, promoted for heart health, naturally sweet. It was her favorite, and yet it was also the very thing quietly raising her uric acid levels, because what no one had told her was this: fructose, even in natural juice, can raise uric acid more efficiently than red meat. It's not the purity of the sugar, it's the metabolic pathway. Fructose, whether from fruit juice, soda, or agave, gets metabolized in the liver, where it rapidly depletes ATP and produces uric acid as a byproduct. It doesn't matter how healthy the source is. To your kidneys, it's still acid building, and in someone with slowed renal clearance, like many people over 60, that uric acid builds up fast. The hidden face of gout. Most people associate gout with one thing: the big toe. But in older women, especially those who are thin or postmenopausal, gout often shows up in the hands, misdiagnosed as osteoarthritis, overlooked as aging, and quietly made worse by daily rituals, like juice, wine, or dried fruits. Yelena's pain wasn't random. It was fueled, and the clue was in her blood. Uric acid, 8.6 mg/dL, too high. The first step to relief wasn't a pill. It was letting go of a myth. We didn't start with medication. We started with re-education. No more daily juice. Reduced dried fruit, especially dates and raisins, increased hydration with lemon water and herbal teas, more fiber to help uric acid exit the body, and finally, a food journal to track when pain flared. It wasn't instant, but within 3 weeks, the swelling eased. By month 2, she could wear her rings again, and one morning she cried while tying her granddaughter's hair, something she hadn't done in over a year. Food isn't just nourishment. It's information. Every bite, every sip tells your body something. For Yelena, her favorite drink had become a daily whisper of inflammation. Once she stopped listening to the marketing and started listening to her body. Her healing began. A question for you: what are you sipping each day? Fruit juice? Sweet tea? Healthy smoothies loaded with banana, honey, and dates? Even the kindest foods can hurt you when your body no longer clears what they build up. Yelena didn't need more medicine. She needed less of the wrong information. Next, we meet Sergey. In the next chapter, you'll meet Sergey, 68, a former athlete whose knees betrayed him during a morning jog. He thought it was old injuries catching up, but beneath the pain was something richer and saltier, because Sergey loved a certain breakfast food and never imagined it was that which filled his joints with fire. What was it? Chances are you've had it this week. Want to find out? He jogged every morning until his knees locked in place. Sergey was 68 and proud. Ex-Army, ran 5 miles 3 times a week, never smoked, rarely drank. He wore his routine like a badge of honor: early to bed, early to rise, eggs and toast for breakfast, always with a little something salty on the side. He called it balance, until the morning he couldn't finish his jog. He bent to tie his shoe, and pain exploded behind his knee like a pulled wire. Not muscle pain, not stiffness. A sharp internal grinding. He hobbled home. Ice didn't help. Rest didn't help. 2 days later, the other knee flared, then an elbow, then his thumb. "I've always healed fast," he said, "but this isn't healing." The hidden culprit in his kitchen. When we reviewed his diet, one pattern stood out: cured meats. Every morning, a few slices of ham, sometimes prosciutto. Once or twice a week, salami, high in flavor, high in salt, and, crucially, high in purines. More than that, nitrates, phosphates, and sodium, compounds that increase inflammation, strain the kidneys, and raise uric acid. It wasn't his running that damaged him, it was the recovery that never happened, because his body was constantly inflamed from the inside out. How gout sneaks into healthy lives. Gout doesn't just target the indulgent, it targets the consistent, when the consistent don't realize they've crossed a line. For Sergei, his joints were already under stress from decades of exercise. But his kidneys, quietly aging, his hydration, often low, and the very foods he saw as lean protein were flooding his bloodstream with uric acid. Ham, anchovy-laced dressings, liver pâté at Sunday brunch, even sardines once a week. These aren't crimes, but to his system, they were too much. What we changed: no crash diets, no extremes, just smarter rhythm. Swapped processed meats for soft-boiled eggs, avocado, or plain cottage cheese. Increased hydration, minimum 2 liters of water, daily magnesium citrate before bed to aid excretion and ease joints. And tart cherry extract, one of the few natural supports shown to lower uric acid. Within a month, the flare-up stopped. He ran again, slower, smarter, and for the first time in years, without pain the next day. The illusion of discipline. "I thought I was disciplined," he said. "Turns out I was just habitual. There's a difference. Discipline listens. Habits repeat." Sergei's health didn't fail because he stopped caring. It failed because he stopped questioning. And once he did, healing had room to begin. Pause and ask yourself, what do you eat often? Not the indulgent things, the routine things, the ones you trust. Bacon bits, sardines, organ meats, for the iron, that salty snack with your tea. Gout rarely begins with gluttony. It begins with trusting the wrong foods too long. Next, we meet Tamara. In our next chapter, we meet Tamara. Fatigue and joint pain were just getting older. But buried inside her was an entirely different cause, one that showed up on her skin before it showed up in her blood. And the food behind it? It's marketed as heart healthy. You might even be eating it right now. Shall we step into her story next? She thought it was just aging, until her hands turned red and her energy vanished. Tamara was 73 and elegant in an old-world way. Soft scarves, garden roses, a mind sharp enough to quote Chekhov by heart. But lately, everything had slowed. Her steps, her thoughts, her appetite, and her hands, once steady and strong, had turned red, puffy, and sore at the knuckles. Just arthritis, her doctor said. Part of aging. She believed it until the rash appeared. Tiny, almost invisible bumps around her elbows and fingers. Her skin looked stretched, polished, not in a healthy way. "I just don't feel like myself," she whispered. And that's when I asked a simple question. "What do you eat when you're trying to be healthy?" She smiled. "I have almonds every morning, a few walnuts, a drizzle of olive oil, and of course, my salmon. Every single day." When healthy turns hazardous. Tamara had done everything right. No sugar, little meat, walks every evening, but she had no idea that some of her cleanest foods were loaded with something her body could no longer manage. Purines. Yes, even salmon, especially in high, consistent amounts. And when combined with slow kidney function, a history of dehydration, and the natural hormonal shifts of age, it became a trap. Her gout wasn't in the toe, it was in the skin, the joints, the exhaustion, because not all gout presents with screaming pain. Some forms simmer, quietly inflaming, softening the boundaries of life. What made it clear? Her uric acid. Only slightly elevated, 7.2 mmDL, but the symptoms were classic. Joint swelling, persistent fatigue, inflammatory skin signs, morning stiffness, and a crash every afternoon, even after rest. We adjusted one thing: no high purine fish for 30 days, no salmon, no tuna, no sardines, no mackerel. Instead, white fish like cod or tilapia, plant-based proteins like lentils in moderation, anti-inflammatory fats, avocado, chia seeds, hydration, 2.5 liters per day, and turmeric with black pepper, a natural anti-inflammatory. The awakening. 3 weeks in, the swelling faded. The red bumps disappeared. But most stunning? Her mind returned. "I don't feel like I'm underwater anymore," she said. Her sleep deepened, her mornings brightened, and she began, slowly, to want touch again, to feel alive in her own skin. It wasn't magic. It was removal. Sometimes healing begins not with more, but with less. Tamara didn't need more supplements. She didn't need to try harder. She just needed to see the truth behind a label. Salmon may be heart healthy, but it isn't gout healthy, especially not every day. Ask yourself quietly, what do you eat because it's healthy? And has your body changed how it responds? Because health isn't just about good foods, it's about matching the right foods to the right season of life. And after 60, that season changes. Next, we meet Valentine. In the next chapter, we meet Valentine, 74, a gentleman who never drank, never smoked, and still found himself waking with foot pain he couldn't explain. The food behind it? So ordinary, you probably have it in your fridge. So common, doctors rarely ask about it, and yet, when removed, it gave him back his mornings. He never smoked or drank, so why couldn't he stand without pain? Valentine was 74 and gentle by nature, a retired school librarian, collector of stamps, fond of black tea, early jazz, and soft slippers. He lived alone, but never lonely, kept routines, wrote postcards, took morning walks. But one morning he couldn't rise without wincing. It wasn't dramatic, just a deep aching throb in the arch of his foot, spreading toward his ankle. He thought it was a strain. Maybe he slept wrong, but it happened again the next morning, then again, and this time with swelling. That's when he called his doctor. But what they didn't expect was what showed up in his labs. Uric acid. The quiet climber. Valentine's uric acid level was 8.9, far above the healthy range. But how? He didn't drink alcohol, didn't eat red meat, never touched shellfish. He lived, by most standards, clean. So we asked one more question. What do you have with your toast in the morning? He smiled. Cottage cheese. And with his lunch? Usually yogurt, and sometimes in the evening, a bit of kefir. A dairy lover, and not just any dairy, high protein, casein-rich, acid-forming dairy. Dairy and gout. The forgotten link. Now here's the twist. Low-fat dairy is often recommended to prevent gout, but certain types of dairy, especially those rich in casein and sodium, can worsen symptoms in sensitive individuals. Why? Some proteins, like casein, increase uric acid via specific metabolic pathways. High-sodium cottage cheese can slow kidney filtration, reducing uric acid clearance, and fermented dairy in excess can trigger subtle inflammation in aging guts. Valentine wasn't doing anything wrong, he was just doing it too consistently, and his kidneys quietly overloaded. What we changed. This wasn't about restriction, it was about redistribution. Swapped cottage cheese for mashed avocado or hummus, replaced yogurt with unsweetened almond milk and berries, reduced kefir to once a week, added celery, cucumber, and parsley into lunch, all natural uric acid reducers, and increased hydration, warm water with lemon 3 times daily. Within 2 weeks, the pain in his foot was gone. By week 4, he was walking the park loop again, smiling, writing, living. And he said something beautiful. I thought I was losing my feet, but really, I was just losing balance. Even good habits need updating. Valentine's diet wasn't bad. It was out of sync, because what supports us at 50 can betray us at 70. Especially when our kidneys, joints, and inflammatory systems are whispering truths we no longer hear. He didn't need guilt, he needed guidance. What about you? What's in your fridge every day? Cottage cheese? Yogurt? Protein shakes? High-sodium snacks labeled as low-fat? None of them are wrong unless they're quietly building something your body can't clear. Gout doesn't always scream. Sometimes it taps. Next, we meet Nina. In the next chapter, we meet Nina, 76, who had no joint pain, no swelling, but began losing mobility in her fingers and thought it was just age. But the cause was hiding in her evening routine, because one of the most powerful triggers of uric acid isn't food at all. It's dehydration, and what you drink, or don't drink, after 6 p.m. might be silently writing your next morning's pain. Her fingers weren't swollen, but they were slipping away. Nina, she had been a seamstress for 40 years, her hands delicate, strong, precise. Threading needles, cutting fabric, tying bows for grandchildren's gifts. But lately, the buttons gave her trouble. Not from pain, from loss. Of grip, precision, timing. It wasn't stiffness, not exactly, just failure to respond. It's like I press the command, she told me, but my fingers hesitate. There was no redness, no heat, no classic gout, but her uric acid was rising, 7.6 mg/dl, and her kidneys showing early signs of stress. Still, the biggest clue wasn't in her blood, it was in her routine. What she didn't drink mattered more than what she did. Nina wasn't overindulging. In fact, she prided herself on being good. Simple meals, light evening snacks, no alcohol, no soda, a bit of yogurt, some bread, a small square of dark chocolate. She did everything right, except for one thing. After 6 p.m., she barely drank anything at all. Otherwise, I'm up all night going to the bathroom, she said. Perfectly understandable. But over time, it became a trap. Dehydration, the silent partner in gout. Here's the overlooked truth. Gout isn't just about what you add to your body. It's about what your body can't clear. And the kidneys, our main detox partners, need water, not gallons, but enough to flush uric acid, support joint lubrication, prevent crystal formation overnight. Because most uric acid buildup happens not during the day, but at night while you're sleeping, when the body is repairing, when the blood is thicker, when hydration is lowest. And if the kidneys aren't gently flushed before bed, those crystals have time to settle. Often in the smallest joints, like fingers, exactly where Nina felt her loss. The healing was simple, but deep. We didn't overhaul her diet, we hydrated her life. Glass of warm water with a pinch of sea salt at 5 p.m., 1 cup of chamomile or nettle tea at 8 p.m. magnesium before bed to support kidney function and muscle recovery. A light walk after dinner to encourage circulation. And finally, no fluids. 90 minutes before bed to avoid nighttime urination. The result? In 2 weeks, her grip began to return. Buttons were easier. Zippers didn't frustrate. Her morning hands felt younger. And the best part? She slept better too. Because hydration doesn't just help joints. It soothes the nervous system. What Nina said next. I didn't know I was drying up inside. And that's the line that stuck with me. Because so many people over 60 are quietly doing the same. Living clean, living careful, but forgetting. Water is not just a wellness tip. It's a requirement for movement. Pause here. When was your last glass of water? not coffee, not tea, not juice. Water. And how consistent is your hydration after lunch? Not just for your skin, not just for energy, for your joints, because even the best diet will fail if your kidneys are struggling in silence. Next, we complete the circle. In our final chapter, we meet Mikhail, 80, who lived decades with gout, managing it the hard way: pills, restriction, and shame. But in the end, he found freedom not in avoidance, but in reconnection, because gout doesn't just take your joints, it can take your confidence, your freedom, your touch. And reclaiming your life begins not with fear, but with knowledge. Shall I close the journey with Mikhail's story? He lived with gout for 20 years, but the real pain wasn't in his joints. Mikhail was 80 and quiet, not shy, just reserved. The kind of man who spoke only when it mattered, and meant every word. He had been a machinist in his youth, a father, a widower, a man who once lifted engines with his bare hands. Now he needed help pulling on his socks. Gout had claimed his big toe, his knees, both ankles. Over the years, he'd grown used to the swelling, the flare-ups, the pills, colchicine, allopurinol, NSAIDs. He had routines, he had restrictions, he had acceptance. But what he didn't have anymore was hope. "I don't expect it to get better," he told me. "I just want it to stop getting worse." And that's where our real work began. When management becomes a prison, Mikhail had followed every rule. No red meat, no beer, low purine, everything medication as prescribed, regular labs. And still the flares came, not weekly, not monthly, but always there, like a shadow that never quite left the room. He thought this was simply his life now, but what no one had asked him, not in 20 years, was how he felt, how he slept, how he moved, how he connected, because the real weight wasn't in his joints, it was in his disconnection. What was missing? Not one doctor had ever talked to Mikhail about. His sleep, broken, his hydration, minimal, his protein, too low, his loneliness, unspeakable. He had followed the diet, but not the life. And gout, though real and painful, had become a metaphor. He had been shrinking, avoiding walks, avoiding people, avoiding touch. And yet, his labs weren't terrible. His body wasn't broken. It was waiting. What we rebuilt. Gently. We didn't just treat the numbers, we treated the man. Daily hydration plan, 2.5 liters over 10 hours, evening leg elevation to support lymph flow, slow protein reintroduction, soft-boiled eggs, quinoa, bone broth, short walks in the sun, even 10 minutes, and once a week, a massage from a visiting therapist to remind him he still deserved care. But the biggest change? Connection. I encouraged his daughter to visit twice a week. We enrolled him in a community art class. He began painting, first with clumsy fingers, then with curiosity. His flares didn't disappear, but they lessened and his life returned, because the body doesn't just heal from avoidance, it heals from engagement. Mikhail's words, etched in my mind. "I thought gout had taken everything," he said, "but it hadn't taken my desire to live. I just forgot I had one." Bringing it all home from Dmitri's swollen toe to Yelena's juice-fueled flares, from Sergei's knees to Nina's thirst, from Valentine's quiet breakfast to Tamara's elegant confusion. Each of them showed one truth. Gout is not just about what you eat. It's about what your body can no longer carry and what your life no longer provides. Pain is never just physical, and healing is never just chemical. It's also rest rhythm, connection, curiosity, and sometimes surrender. A final reflection. If you live with gout or care for someone who does, know this. You're not being punished. You're being invited to listen more closely, to eat more wisely, to hydrate more consistently, to love more openly, and to walk slowly, steadily, gently, back to yourself. From my heart to yours. If this series meant something to you, if it stirred something awake, I invite you to share it, not for me, but for every person suffering in silence. And if you'd like more stories like this, about healing after 60, restoring energy, intimacy, and meaning, please like, comment, and subscribe. You are not alone. You are not too late, and you are always stronger with time. Warmly, Doctor.